following is an Operation Podcast production.
There are these moments of time that come around, and the ground that we were standing on that was once so steady and sturdy is now shaky and wobbly, and everything that we've been holding on to and working towards is seemingly falling apart. And we do our best to just, hold on as tight as we can to white knuckle our way through life. And what we were failing to realize is that crisis, that disruption, is a divine ambush, and it's actually coming and giving you an opportunity to recenter. My name is Campbell. I am an inspirational storyteller / keynote speaker, and I'm here with Ruben on Live Through Love, where we had an incredible conversation around how to build a life that you're proud of and not lose yourself in the process. We talk about how we all experience, individually and collectively, a divine ambush. And these divine ambushes are these massive disruptions in our lives that come along. And really, at the core of what they are, they're invitations for us to deepen our sense of self and expand our lives. And I just know you are going to get something out of this.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Live Through Love. I'm your host, Ruben Rojas, and thank you for tuning in. For those that are tuning in, who are you? What do you do?
I just took advantage of this moment to try to get some wisdom from you.
No, feel free to ask, but no, what's your journey? So tell us about Caleb. How did you get here? It's been an amazing journey.
Yeah, it's been an interesting one. Grew up in Texas, and I was 6 when I scored the game-winning touchdown of the community-wide all-star football game. Bro, this is Texas. This is a big deal.
Oh, I know.
Think the only thing that might have been a bigger deal than this is if I was cast to play Jesus in a school play. But I remember after scoring that touchdown, like it was yesterday, I looked over at the sideline to find my biggest fan, my mom. And when I locked eyes with her, I ran over to her as fast as my tired little legs could run. And I got to her, and she bent over and she grabbed me by the face and she said, "Caleb, I'm so proud of you. I love you so much. You scored the game-winning touchdown." And that moment, this innocent moment exchange between a mother and her son, it marked me. And I didn't have to understand intellectually what was happening because I felt it right here. I felt it in my heart. And at 6 years old, I just learned to believe that, my acceptance in life is found through my performance. And so from a young age, I was this really performance-driven kid that I didn't know how to play. I wanted to work. And obviously that mindset, it took me all across the country at a young age. And a lot of people were talking in the state of Texas about my bright future as an athlete. And I say that because that was a really big moment for me that started my journey. But I think there's another, I'm going to share another story because it just came to my mind. But when I was 13, I remember this moment marking me as well. Because it was the last day of summer in my hometown, and what everyone did on the last day of summer is you went to the city pool, and for whatever reason, on this last day of summer, when I was 13 years old, I thought this would be a great idea where I would show up wearing an American flag Speedo. And it's so embarrassing to think about it. For whatever reason, I love this dumbass Speedo. I was different. I wanted to be different. I wanted to express myself. And I remembered having this whole thought process about what I'm going to do when I get into the pool. And I decided that the best way to do this is a grand reveal, go to the high dive, jump up, get on top of the high dive and jump off. And I got to the high dive and I jumped off. And I remember when I got up out of the water, everybody wasn't sharing in my enthusiasm, but they were laughing at my expense. And it's funny to talk about this, but I remember in that moment, I was so humiliated and so ashamed that I ran to the boys' locker room and I put on a t-shirt and I covered as much of my body as I could possibly cover with that t-shirt. And I say this because when I was 13 years old, I learned to believe that my most authentic self is not accepted. And I also was taught to believe that vulnerability is my enemy. And I also knew from my 6-year-old story and from time and time again throughout my athletic career that Caleb scoring touchdowns was wildly accepted. And so from about 13 years old, I created this like, I'll show you mentality. And it carried me. It carried me to West Point, the United States Military Academy, where I got that Division I college football scholarship. My freshman year, I was all conference. All state through high school, got inducted into the Texas High School Hall of Fame for football. My sophomore year at the academy, my freshman year was all conference. My sophomore year at the academy, I was the number 6 rated strong safety in all of college football. And so that's when my name started to showing up on, different draft boards and conversations around ESPN if I can get drafted and all this stuff. Then my senior year, I was captain of the football team, and then this mentality, like this performance-driven, ruthless ambition, dogged determination, make something of myself, I'll prove you wrong, I'll show you. It landed me at Radio City Music Hall, where I ended up getting selected in the 2008 NFL Draft. But it was at that time where I could feel like my life, I was spending every moment of my life, all of my energy trying to hold together this idea of a man that I thought people expected me to be and that I thought I was supposed to be, and really just hold together this dream that I've been after for so long. And if you're familiar with West Point, you have to, when you graduate the academy, you have a 5-year minimum service obligation, so you get commissioned as an officer. And my sophomore year at the academy, the academy put in this new policy that would essentially allow any cadet athletes who graduated and had a professional contract to serve and play simultaneously. And we are a nation at war at this time. So as you can probably imagine, a lot of people supported this policy, but a lot of people criticized it as well. And I knew that going in. I just didn't expect people to criticize me the way that I did, or the way that they did. And after I got drafted, I went back home. I went back to West Point, and I went into the barracks, which is our dorm room. And that night, late at night, I was exhausted, and my head hit the pillow. And as my head hit the pillow, I had this just series of thoughts run through my mind, through my awareness. And it was like the whole world the whole sports world just watched you on national television. Like everybody knows your story. Everybody's like, you were just paraded on national television at the NFL draft in your West Point uniform, and you did interviews on national television. Everybody's watching you. And then that thought was like, fuck, what if I fail? Like, what if I don't meet the expectations? And man, in that moment, my heart began to pound so viciously that I could feel it in my ears, and my hands began to shake, and my breath began to shorten, and I honestly didn't feel like my legs could work, and I thought I was having a goddamn heart attack. And so I rolled out of my bed, and I literally crawled across the hallway, and I got into the community bathroom and was able to turn on a shower, and I laid there under that water just pouring down on me, and it was the first time I've ever experienced a panic attack. And looking back, it was so clear that the weight of that moment, it fractured my life, because I didn't have the capacity to hold that with the intentionality and the awareness that I needed to hold it. And it was such an eye-opening experience for me, because I realized that this was an invitation for me to start doing life differently. And it was an opportunity for me to ask for help and to get help that I needed as a cadet athlete and as a person. But again, that would require authenticity and vulnerability. And so I doubled down on this thought process that I can just achieve my way out of this. If I can just reach this next pinnacle of success, I'll find what I'm looking for. I'll be okay. And obviously we know where that ends. And so I ended up getting to the NFL, and I played better football when I was 6 years old in that flag football, or in that all-star tournament. When I got to the NFL, my performance, because when you deny and suppress and hide everything that's happening, it takes a toll on your mental health and your emotional wellness, and it took a toll on my performance. And so I knew it was a matter of time before I was about to get cut. And sure enough, I knew I was about to get cut, and it was about to happen. On the day of my first NFL contract signing, Literally moments before I was supposed to sign my contract, I got a call from West Point and from my agent telling me that I needed to get to the stadium. And so in my head, I'm like, fuck, I got cut. And it's over. Before training camp even started, I'm getting cut. I got to the facility and I walked into the room where everybody was, and coaches were there, owner was there, general manager was there. And that's when there was a phone in the middle of the table, and that's when I heard the athletic director from West Point on the other line, and he said, Caleb, that policy that we created your sophomore year, it no longer exists. You have to return back to active duty immediately. So you can't play, can't serve, return back to active duty immediately. And a lot of people think that I was like, discouraged and devastated that, my childhood dream had just been, taken away from me. And I was elated. I was so just ecstatic because it was like, in a lot of ways, a get out of jail free card. The whole world didn't have to see me as the fraud that I knew I was. And in my head, I had 3 years now to go back and serve in the military, which I did. And I have 3 years to get bigger, faster, and stronger so that when I get back to the league, I can work my way out of this place. And that's what I did. For 3 years, I served in the military, and I also, 5 a.m. PT calls, training activities in the afternoon, classroom work in the evenings, and then my NFL training workouts. The resilience, the grit, the determination, all the things, right? All the willfulness and the willpower to hold it all together and to become bigger, better, faster, and stronger. And I got back to the league, and the first practice I had when I got back to the league 3 years later, I ran out into that field and I had this moment that paralyzed me. And I had to run around the corner of the building and I just puked everywhere because I knew that I was fucked because it just became so clear to me that there was no amount of external work that I could do to reconcile this internal war that I was feeling. And I knew from the day of my first NFL game and practice, ultimately, that it was time to walk away from the league. I couldn't heal. My life couldn't change in that ecosystem. And I knew I needed to walk away, but I was terrified to walk away because it's the only life that I have known. It's the way that I found acceptance and value and all the things that make us want to live life. And so I held on, and I think holding on when you know you're supposed to walk away is a nightmare. It's the recipe for suffering, and that led me to coping in really unhealthy ways and substance abuse and, doing everything that I can to ultimately get kicked out of the league because I didn't have the courage to walk away from the league. And that led me down a pretty dark path to one night waking up and realizing that I was actively trying to kill myself because I felt so trapped in my life. And I was living my life for everyone else and not for myself. And I didn't know what that looked like. And I didn't have the courage to say yes to that. And so I realized after getting cut for the third time that it was time to hang up my cleats. It was time to go discover who the hell Caleb Campbell really is, which through a strange series of events landed me in Canada, where I would go on. I found an organization on Twitter one night when I was high. And this organization on Twitter, through a series of tweets, they put language to what I was feeling. And it was talking about how essentially there is no new life. You can't step into new life without first death. And I couldn't understand it. And then the more I read, I was like, holy shit, I'm dying. That's what's going on in my life. I'm dying, and I'm letting go of an old way of doing things. And there's that in-between space, liminal space in between old ways of life and new ways of life. And I'm in that in-between space, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And I'm afraid to step into that because it's full of uncertainty and unpredictability and vulnerability. All the things that I've been taught to think are so wrong and bad and scary. And so I don't know what it was, but I was like, I got to go there. And literally the next day I packed up everything that could fit in my car and put everything else in storage. And I drove to Canada and I walked into this organization. I said, I need help. Can you help me? It's like, this is going to sound weird, but I found you guys on Twitter. Can I get some help? And sure enough, they said yes. And I moved into the basement floor. I moved into the basement of a boiler room where I slept on a cot for 5 years. And I became the janitor of this organization. I swept floors, I cleaned bathrooms, I washed windows. In exchange for free therapy. And those 5 years revolutionized my life. It was like the first time that I allowed myself to drop the pretenses, the facades, to come out from hiding, and allowing myself to be fully seen. and to show up and to take up space. And that's when the healing began to happen. And that's when I began to taste healing. And I will stop there as, it's where my life began to turn the corner, where I alluded to it earlier, but I began to taste what it looks like and feels like to live an embodied life, to be connected to that heart space, and to understand that there is a rhythm and a flow to each of our lives, and we just have to learn how to find it and rest in it. And I learned how to rest in it, and that inner rest that I was experiencing, that I could taste, it became ultimately kind of like a prophecy for my life, and I've been, leaning into it each and more every day since then.
Yeah. No. Wow. Thank you for sharing. Honestly, I'm listening to that, and I could just put that next to like my path as well, because, and I don't know if you have siblings or not. I'm the eldest, so that gives you're in the middle.
Yeah.
So, well, the middle one becomes visible at some point. So, eldest, you perform, you're held at this higher standard. But, at 6, you were validated. Oh, if I show up winning, I get validated. Or at 13, you had that story. Like, we all have these stories that define who we are. And sometimes we don't realize the moments or the events or the past memories completely made us right now. And we don't want to go back and address it. And all this just added up and added up and added up. And me as a high performer, avoiding things. And okay, if I do the work, I can control putting in the work. You can control there's a lot of things we can't control. So we kind of double down on those things. So I'm hearing a lot of that. And then eventually it just catches up to you. And then the other thing I heard there is when you were in the in-between. Like when I decided to do this, I was in finance 5 years. I'm depressed. What the hell is going on with my life? I don't know what this would look like. And if I keep succeeding at finance, I'm never going to leave.
That's the trap right there.
So I start sabotaging it. Yeah. But I still don't go full in over here. So I'm in the in-between. I called it Mediocreville. I literally said I'm living in pure mediocrity because I'm purposely sabotaging one end, which is not allowing me to succeed in the other. And I have to quit one thing or the other. Either go in here or keep failing here till it kicks me out. Like you said, I didn't have the courage to quit. I got myself kicked out.
Yeah.
Like, how how many times we've probably done that in relationships but finally I'm like, they're not going to just get rid of me. I'm done. I have to choose. So I decided I'm gone, I'm out. And then this takes off. Yeah. So like those things that you were just saying, I'm like, they're mere parallels. The energy's the same. And as men, like we all have similar conversations and stories. Maybe the walk of life is different, the clothing's different, but we're at the same point. Like, how are we to be vulnerable? How are we what is heart-centered? And, many times in my life, oh, you're sensitive. You're sensitive.
Thank you
don't cry. And like, I'm like, stop getting butthurt. I'm like, yo, like, how is this not normal?
Sure.
You start doing the work and it's like, it's easier for me to go on stage and yell, fuck you to everybody than me to go up on stage and say, you know what, I'm feeling this way and I'm going to cry. Yeah. Which takes a more powerful and courageous stance.
That's strength.
So it's like we're taught that vulnerability is not strength.
Yeah. Which is the epitome of it. I think what you I think we just need to have more conversations around that in-between space, because I feel like a lot of people can sense that it's time to walk away, it's time to let go, it's time to quit, it's time to step out, right? But I don't fucking know what's next. And you're not supposed to know. And I think that is like a moment, if you can recognize this and reframe that moment, if you realize that you're not supposed to know and you're supposed to step into that uncertainty, unpredictability, because it is the greatest gift for you, because it's in that place of not knowing, right, that a lot of shit will surface and you get to heal the things that you need to get healed or that are buried, that you need to work through so that you can step into this new life, because nothing in your life is going to actually change until you change. And so I think if we can just put more language to that in-between space to give people references of what to expect when you walk away, like, I don't know, I just think the world would be a better place, because a lot of people wouldn't fucking hate their lives because they hate what they do and they feel trapped in their own lives. And, I call it a divine ambush, where there are these moments of time that come around, and the ground that we were standing on that was once so steady and sturdy is now shaky and wobbly, and everything that we've been holding on to and working towards is seemingly falling apart. And we do our best to just, hold on as tight as we can to white knuckle our way through life. And what we were failing to realize is that crisis, that disruption is a divine ambush, and it's actually coming and giving you an opportunity to recenter. And it just takes courage, right? It just takes this willingness to not know, to step into that uncertainty, to be willing to sit in the darkness. That's just the thing, is like, I've always sat in the darkness, but I've always been trying to find my way out of it as fast as I can. Like, this is uncomfortable, get me out of here. And it's when you're willing to actually sit in the darkness and posture your heart with this willingness to be there for as long as it takes, only then will things begin to change. You know what I mean?
And part of doing the work, the whole point of doing the work, getting the tools, is we're human, we're fallible, we're going to be in the darkness again, we're going to be in our shit again. But now we're practicing how to get out of it quicker. That's the whole thing.
Well, it's not even like, absolutely. You build a relationship with yourself, you build a trust with yourself. And truthfully, I find that, like, especially as an athlete, there is a confidence that comes from skill set and ability. And then there's a confidence that comes from knowing who you are, which we know. But when you are willing to let go and to step into that liminal space, which, ancient mystics would call it God's waiting room. Native American traditions would call it crazy time, because you literally feel like you're going fucking crazy. Like the whole, your whole experience of how you do life begins to change and transform. And then before anything new appears, the old first has to pass away. And that's such a death. It's a grieving, it's a letting go, it's a surrendering, and that's hard. But it's just a beautiful gift, and it becomes this divine ambush that gives us the opportunity to do life in a new way. And so if we can just start reframing, and I find like COVID was this global divine ambush, and I'm not trying to undermine in any shape, way, or form, undermine the severity of COVID and the pandemic, and like how many people actually lost loved ones and lost friends. But I think for all of us, what has happened, it's been an invitation to let go of the old way of doing things. And I think we're seeing that. I think we're on the edge of a spiritual revolution. I think it's the next revolution. And it's like, and I think this is why we're seeing the last ditch effort from the, American evangelicalism, and how Christianity is portrayed in our country and all of its nastiness and ugliness, which is the antithesis of what love is. I think we're seeing right now, like, the way we're doing life is no longer working. The way we move our lives forward is no longer working. The way we're doing life at work is no longer working. The way we're showing up is no longer working. And it's on the other side of this divine ambush. And so if we can embrace that, guess what? Like, new life is right around the corner. And that new life is, I like to think it's the life you've been looking for, but you've always felt one step behind.
Yeah, and there's a few things there. Like, I thought the pandemic, similar to you, it's like, it's an opportunity. Yes, there was a lot of negativity, fear, death, poverty, all that. But it's not what we're talking about. What do we do after the fact?
Yeah.
Right? Then BLM came. What do we do after the fact? New politics change. What do we do after that? The thing is, we get hoorah-rod, and we just like to yell out words, but we never take the action. And I know every time I don't take action, like, oh, I'm sitting here in the same thing again because I didn't act upon what I should have done differently. And maybe reframing the conversation as the in-between. A lot of it, lately, this phrase has been in my head. Society says so. Society says so. Society says so. But I say no. So, like, we keep conforming to what society's telling us we need to be, how we need to show up. Like, part of this, I say, it's the American dream. You buy the house, you are cogging the system, you go to work, but now, like, you're not getting paid what it is to afford a house. Like, the American, it doesn't exist. Like, so it's like we're stuck on these thought processes. And maybe if we could surrender to being in the in-between, not looking at it as bad, but looking at it what's next. And maybe reframing two things. We know we're here for a finite amount of time. We're going to die. So if we keep remembering that we're going to die, it can help support, like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. Or, next month. I'll go on that trip next year. I'll lose weight in 5 years. Like, you might not have 5 years.
Yeah, totally. Have you read Oliver Berkman's, is it 4,000 Weeks 4,000, I can't remember, I haven't read it, but Tim Ferriss released an episode that was just him reading a episode or a chapter of that book. And it's called, I think, The Therapy of Cosmic Insignificance. Dude, it was the most fucking liberating thing I've ever heard, talking about procrastination and the finite time. In this chapter, essentially the synopsis of it is nobody's going to fucking remember you. Like when we look at the lifespan of humanity, there's been very few people who are remembered. Very few people.
Yeah.
And when we look at like our life, like nobody is going to remember you. And it sounds so like, oh, that's terribly sad, but it's also incredibly liberating. Nobody's going to remember you. Do the fucking thing. Like, take action, do the thing, because nobody's going to remember this. So make the most of it. Show up. Allow yourself to be seen. Be goofy. Make mistakes. Fall forward. But nobody's going to. It's like, I remember when I first read that, there was a moment where I was like grieving. Where I was like, oh, nobody's going to remember me, especially as a 4 who just craves significance and purpose and meaning in his life. But then the other side of me is like, wow, no more perfectionism. No more procrastination. Let's just go. Let's do it. Let's make the most of it.
But if you layer that in and then follow up with how do you want to be remembered, now that's 2 different things.
It's good.
Right? Like, oh, no one's going to remember me, but how do I want to be remembered?
Yeah.
Because you can control how you want to be remembered instead of like, well, I can go be the Unabomber and leave a legacy that way, write my manifesto, but... You know, those people are remembered for atrocities. So what do we want to be remembered for?
It's good. Yeah. My remarkably good looks. Not really.
Well, that's why we got photos now. The new iPhone.
Man, you know, it's been changing the subject here. We moved to Nashville. My wife and I, we left Los Angeles 18 months ago, and we went to Nashville. And it's been a healthy move. But you know what? There are so many more bald men in Nashville, and it just feels more comfortable for my big bald ass head. I come to LA and everyone's got perfect fucking hair, and I'm like, God damn it. I'm constantly like making sure I don't think less of myself because of my hairline.
Well, so you got that nice hat on.
That's a nice hat, man. And I'm learning how to embrace my full humanity in Nashville, but I miss LA. And last night I was talking to my wife. Sorry, I just totally took this conversation on a tangent. I was flying into LA and she was like, how does it feel being back? And leaving LA was so necessary because when I look back, I was never in my life in LA. I was never in my life. There were all of these expectations. Like when I left Canada, I came to LA and I never imagined living in LA. I'm a small town Texas boy. LA is not for me. But when I came here and I felt the energy of this city, I fell in love with the city. The city changed my life. And I had all of these expectations of how I thought my life was going to change and what my life was going to look like. And so I was never actually in my life as much as I was waiting for my life to happen. And I was constantly, you know, comparing myself and living with all of these doers and these people doing amazing things, and which was, you know, motivating, but at a great cost. And that experience of constantly feeling like I'm like peeking my head around the corner, waiting for the next thing to happen, the next thing, just was debilitating. And when my wife and I were talking about moving from Los Angeles, I couldn't say yes. And I couldn't say yes because I couldn't help but to feel like a failure. So last night when I was flying in, my wife said, like, how did it feel? And I'm like, you know, leaving Los Angeles was the greatest decision because I feel like I have my life back. I'm in my life. I'm living my life. You know, David Whyte's one of my favorite poets, and one of his lines in a poem called The Great Belonging, he says to give up all other worlds except the one which you call home here and now. And here and now has never been enough for me. And so it's constantly be doing, going, chasing, you know, that upward trajectory. In Nashville, I felt like when I was driving the U-Haul to Nashville, I could already feel myself grieving. And I don't think we talk about this enough, but it's the non-finite loss in life. It's the unmet expectations and the unfulfilled dreams. And I needed to leave LA because I needed to finally let go of who I thought I should be and what I think my life should look like. And so when I got to Nashville, it was the grieving and the letting go and the surrendering. And it's changed my life, especially my quality of life and my personal happiness. But it's interesting, and I say all that in a long-winded way, because when I was flying in last night, I couldn't help to still feel like there's a part of me that failed here. And I don't know, I'm still sitting with that. Because I know intellectually I can be like, fuck no, like it's the furthest thing from the truth. And I think it's because I moved to Los Angeles with all of the intentions or the expectations of how I thought my life was going to change. My life changed just in the way I never imagined. I thought moving to Los Angeles was about creating a bigger and better life. But actually, moving to Los Angeles was actually leading me to the edge of the metaphorical cliff of my life, where I had to give up all of the expectations and learn how to accept who I am, where I am. And that was such a pain point, and that changed my life. So much grieving and letting go and surrendering and changed my life. But I don't know. Being back in LA has given me a lot of mixed feelings, and so I'm processing my emotions with you. Thanks for listening. I'll pay you later.
Interesting. So I'm born and raised in LA. I'm from here through and through. Okay. So my wife's like, dude, we should just go over here. We can have this house, and we can have. I'm like, what I do, I have to be here. I'm also from here. Like it's
That's
like
different.
It is different. Yeah. I can't imagine.
Feel like you need to leave home for a season?
I mean, we travel a lot, so we visit a lot of countries. Yeah. We leave 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there. Yeah. It's always great coming back and experiencing cultures and food and everything.
That's the thing about LA is I feel like a lot of people have to leave home because you can't heal where you were wounded. A lot of times it's hard to, but I feel like LA is so robust, so big that you have enough pockets to where that could, obviously that can happen. I'm not saying that can't happen elsewhere, but I think part of the journey of coming back home to yourself is leaving the familiar, right?
Yeah. And the routine.
Whatever. Yeah.
So you just unwrapped something and said, once you left, you healed and you redefined who you were. So who are you now?
I'm Caleb.
Not West Point grad, ex-NFL. I'm just Caleb.
No, I'm Caleb. Guy with a big smile and a big forehead. Yeah, I'm still. Yeah, just saying that I'm Caleb. Like I remember just 2 weeks ago, my wife and I bought a home in Nashville. We just had a baby girl, and I was laughing because I was on our deck getting ready to do some like remodeling, and I was laughing because if you would have asked me 4 years ago, I would have told you that the life that I'm in now was the epitome of failure. It was I couldn't cut it. And so I gave it up and I got married and I had a family and I bought the home. And so I would have said, 4 years ago that's failure, that I just, that's what people do when they can't make it big. And that's the story that I told myself. But clearly, like, I had to tell myself that because I'm in the life that I've always dreamed of. I love my fucking life, genuinely love my life. I'm in my life. I'm connected to my life. Life isn't happening I'm living my life, and I feel that. I actually feel that, and it's come at a great cost. Like, it's only happened as I've learned how to grieve and let go of all of these expectations of where I think I should be and what my life should look like and who I should be and all that stuff. And so, of course, I had to tell myself that story, because that story is what protected me from actually going into the depths of my darkness and letting go and surrendering and grieving and accepting and really embodying that radical acceptance of who I am and where I am. And so who is Caleb? Caleb is just somebody that's, I don't know. I'm Caleb. That's it.
No, it's
enough,
perfect.
Man. Yeah, it's enough.
But that also goes to like society says so. Yeah. I say no. Like, I don't know why this has been stuck in my head. Actually, there was like a hip hop song on, and I started freestyling around that topic because I do poetry and stuff. Sometimes I'll do songs.
That's dope.
And that's just the thing. So what you surrendered to what you thought society said you should be, and you validated yourself to X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Right. I should be Hall of Fame safety in the NFL with yada, 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 and endorsements. And I'm Troy Polamalu.
I wish.
Not with a Head and Shoulders commercial, but hey.
Yeah, right? No. Maybe a Rogaine commercial, but.
But you never know.
Yeah.
So, and then, some of the things I come down to is that we have conversations with people, and I believe currently with pronouns and genders, and like we keep adding labels. And I think the more labels we had, the more divisiveness we're creating, because it's no longer like, hey, I'm Ruben. Hey, I'm Caleb. Cool. We're two humans having a conversation. Then we can have a conversation and unpack everything else. But sometimes we go to the table with, here's all our stuff, and you're either on board or just completely biased. Because you're like, well, I don't understand non-binary, so we can't have a conversation. I'm like, so now you're bringing something to the table that can trigger someone to not even allow two humans to connect. You know what I'm saying? Sure. So I feel like labels are adding more disconnection, more walls, more barriers.
Do you feel like the labels are added like to create a sense of belonging? So
I think,
but is it really like addressing the underlying issue that we don't know how to belong to ourselves first?
I believe the intention is there as far as like, oh, if we put this out there, we're inclusive to everyone. But if we don't believe we're included or belong, then a label's not going to make us whole. We still have the hole inside of us.
I get that. And I also know there are like systemic injustices that keep people on the outside, you know? And so it's not as, you know, black and white and dualistic as we think it is. I feel like from my own personal experience or just from the way that I see it, but I totally vibe with what you're saying there. Yeah. I think just more as we can learn how to live back in our own lives, connect to our truth, learn to live from the heart, and we can show up as, you know, the most authentic self and the version of our lives. As we do our own work, you know, it allows the cracks to come through, and those cracks are the doorway for connection. And that just will enhance the overall experience of our lives.
I agree. And there's very few things we can control. We can control our word, right? Or showing up on time. But we can control how we take responsibility for ourselves or how we take action. Like, so we focus on what we can control and stop focusing on what we can't control. Then it doesn't matter what we can or can't understand. I mean, well, it's like when people are offended, like you offended me. I'm like, I can't offend you. You took offense to something I said, and you gave your power away in that moment. I can apologize if what I said triggered you to take offense.
And that also doesn't give us a license to be an asshole. Just going around spewing hate and being like, oh, I didn't offend you. You were offended, you know.
Well, that's different.
Yes, totally.
We're talking about not purposely insulting you.
For sure. I get it.
If I insult you, that's different. You insulted me. Well, if you took offense to the insult, that's different. But no, it's just interesting. I think the dynamic's interesting. I'm a dad, you're a dad. Like, how does that make you feel now bringing up a little girl in this world?
That's scary, man, especially being in Tennessee with all the rules, you know, and all the laws changing on, you know, women's rights and abortions and everything. It's just like, fuck. Like, this is home now. Like, this isn't somebody else's issue. This is landed on our doorstep. And so it's changed some things. Having a child has just broken my heart wide open in the best of ways. You know, and I don't know if you feel like this, but I don't know. I've added like this dose of unnecessary pressure to my life now because it's not just me. It's like this, you know, my beautiful daughter, you know, even if it was just me and my wife, like we can live under a bridge together. Like we're fine. But now that my daughter's in the picture, it's like, no, like I'm taking care of you. And it's been interesting to watch how I've added this unnecessary pressure to my life. And I can see, I was processing this with my partner, Kara. I can see like this generational thing happen where I'm like financially we're good. Like it's great. Like I love what I do and I make a good living doing what I do. But I've been caught up in this trap of like, it's not enough. We got to add more. We got to add more. We got to add more. It's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. And it's created a little bit of frantic energy in my life and in our relationship and in our house. And I'm constantly reminding myself that what my daughter doesn't need is more money in the account. What she needs is an emotionally stable father. And in a home that models healthy emotions. And so it's just been interesting to me of like realizing that I've done all of this work of learning how to, you know, befriend my nervous system and, you know, the self-awareness and the self-regulation and the co-regulation with my partner, all this work that's just transformed my life. But now adding the dynamic of a kid, I'm seeing some generational things that like I've learned from my parents just passed down. And I would have told you that that's never going to be an issue with me. But like, fuck. here it is on my front, doorstep, knocking on my heart's door. So it's this beautiful gift where I just, she's a mirror, and having this little tiny is a mirror. And while there are so many things, that I can't control, that we will not be able to control, I can always control how I show up. I don't know if you read the book, or if you're like, I'm sure you were, but I read every fucking book known to man when I found out we were having a little tiny. And there's a book called Brain Rules for Babies. And I can't remember the author's name, but he talks about how every year he does a presentation in Silicon Valley, and it's to all of the big VPs, presidents, CEOs, bajillionaires, whoever, and he does this presentation about adolescence and how to raise a healthy and young adult. And he says at the end of each year, it never fails, that all of these big tech folks, these people, they want to know, what do they need to do now to ensure that their son, their daughter, their child has the best chance of getting into that Ivy League, to make maximum impact with their lives. Like, what do we need to do now? What languages do we need to learn? What curriculum? What school? What boarding school? Like, tell us. And he says they never want to hear my answer. And he says what you can do now, what all the data and all the research now suggests to us, is less about the language and the school. He goes, if you want to set your child up for success, he says, go home and love your partner well. Model healthy relationships. Model emotional health. Man, that fucking hit me, because I'm like, there are so many things I'm going to do wrong, but that's in my power. That's always in my power, right? I can always show up, take responsibility, and model what love looks like, and model emotional health. And that is the one gift that wasn't given to me, that I will damn sure make sure that I give to my daughter.
No, that hits hard. Like, my wife and I talk about this all the time. We don't come with instructions, right? And I don't feel the added pressure now that I have my son. If anything, it's more, I have even more purpose.
Yeah.
Because before it's just me. Yeah, I'm married, I have a partner, but it's just me. Like, if it came down to it, we're in charge of our own lives. Now you have a life that fully depends on you. So it's like, oh shit, okay, now it's more important to even show up like I've been showing up, but even more for him. So we just talk about, we can't say, you don't teach your kid, hey, say please and thank you by saying please and thank you. You teach them by saying please and thank you while you're operating. So I'm always saying, I can't teach him self-love. I can show him how I love myself.
There you go, man.
And he will learn from that. I can't teach him how to take care of a woman. I can show him how I take care of his mom.
Beautiful.
And how his mom takes care of me. And then now, so the healthy relationships and everything. And we have our stuff, and we obviously bicker and whatever, but that's like no yelling, no cursing, and an argument. Those are my rules, is no cursing for sure. But like certain little things that they're going to pick up on. And as your little one gets older, you're going to see how much more like he's brushing his teeth. Like, they do everything. Like, they're your clones. It's hilarious. It's the most amazing thing. And it's also like,
definitely have a potty mouth.
oh yeah, for sure. Mine will too. But I only say no cursing in arguments.
Yes. No,
like
that's
anything
great.
heated,
Absolutely.
Zero cursing. Like, no.
That, yeah.
But we can yell, oh, I fucking love that.
Yeah.
We always say, he's probably going to say, I love you, Dad.
No, that's beautiful, dude. Yeah, she's been such a, just a gift. I read somewhere that like our little tinies, our children, are going to reenact obviously our deepest childhood wounds, right? And they're just an opportunity to reflect back to us, the little child inside of us that still needs to be kissed with compassion and grace. And so, yeah, we signed up for more than just having a kid, I guess.
And just remember, we chose it.
Yeah.
Right?
And I also feel like there is this, I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like when my wife and I were going through the process of naming our daughter, we really set the intention that she's going to, and I say she, our little tiny, however she, I call her she now, our little tiny is going to choose us. And she's going to choose her name. And so it was just a cruel experience to have this moment where we were like throwing out all these names, and we were like, no. And then we said one more name, and we said Sophie London, and both of us just lit up and we're like, holy shit, she just chose her name. Like, that's her name. And we didn't choose it. We've changed, but we really felt like she chose it. And in the same breath, we were like, she chose us as parents. And I've been really holding on, and I talked to my wife about this. She's like, I can't, like, don't go there with me yet. But I'm already, and hear my heart when I say this, I'm already practicing what it feels like to let my daughter go. And not in a sense of like leaving this world, but she's here for her own individual path. She's here on her own spiritual journey, you know, and she chose me as a guide. And I'm not here to tell her what she can do with her life, what she can't do. And I understand, you know, in her formable years and as an adult and responsibility, all that. I'm not saying that. But like, I'm already like, how many times people have lived vicariously through me, parents and, you know, adults, and the added weight and the pressure that's added to my life that's just fucking unfair. And then it's like, there's not anything in me. Like, my daughter is my daughter, and this is her life, and she's going to choose her life, and I'm here to guide her. What a transformational and different and wildly different approach to parenting than what we probably have.
I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah. Like, I always thank you for choosing us, Randy.
Yeah,
like,
right?
I wrote
so much
I wrote a letter. It's a YouTube video I have, and one of the first things, I'm like, one day he'll see this when he understands,
cool.
and I say, thank you for choosing us as your parents.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And then that second part of parents seek validation through their children and that added pressure. There's a book I read. I saw this woman speak, Dr. Shafali. I always mess up her last name, but The Conscious Parent.
Yes.
But she's just talking about parents basically lose their identity once they have kids, and then they try to refine exactly. And then if you start making your kid compete, get the A, because it validates them, and they go to work and like, my kid's got the A, or you're the star football player or basketball player or pianist or whatever it is out there. And now you're validated through that, and not realizing like you're putting all that on your child, and your child doesn't become them. They become something that is trying to please you because it's filling a hole that you have. From not dealing, like, it's this whole thing
between like wanting the best for your child and living vicariously through them. Like, there's such a fine line. I say this with the utmost like respect for my mother. She's done so much for me, and we've talked about this, so I feel like I can speak about it freely. But to that point, when I got cut from the Chiefs and I knew I had to walk away, I called my mom and let her know that I was done playing in the NFL, and her first response was, "What am I going to do now?"
Wow.
And I don't say that to diss my mom. Like,
no,
she's
I know.
such a beautiful woman, and she's done so much for me, but she didn't know any better. She lost herself in her children. And it wasn't me succeeding, right? It was her succeeding too. But it just adds, I mean, it's the definition of codependency. And no healthy relationship can thrive in codependency, or there is no healthy relationship in codependency. And so it just added so much weight and so much pressure to my life. And so I think it just speaks volumes to the importance of us saying yes to our own individual journey, because we will pour ourselves into the lives of somebody else to avoid what we need to go through, or avoid what we need to see and what we need to say yes to in our own lives. And it looks good. Look at everything I'm doing for you. Look at all the sacrifices I'm making for you. But let's call a spade a spade. It's avoidance of your own shit, right? Maybe it's an avoidance of whatever you know that you need to do in your own life. Man, it's just a dangerous path to walk, like, because you can own your shit and like you can say yes to your own journey and still be there for the tinies. And you should.
Totally.
That's the bare minimal.
But also a lot of that is like the way I deal with it, and luckily I came to this pretty early with my mom and parents and stuff. It's just, you chose that for us.
Yeah.
You chose that. Yeah. You chose to have us. You chose everything. And I've said this before I had a kid, and now that I have a kid, it's like, whatever I choose for Remy, I am choosing for him and giving to him. He owes me nothing.
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Yeah. He didn't ask to come to this world. He didn't say, yo, I'm half here and half in mom. Like, let's come together. Like,
sure. No, I'm right.
So it's like, without saying, hey, you go deal with your shit, it's like, you chose that. Like, don't put that on me. Your guilt on me. Don't, like, it's not my guilt to carry, and it shouldn't be my burden. Trust me, those are still things I'm working through, but at least I know that choice was made, and it has nothing to do with me.
That's beautiful. That's good.
You know, and parents, I worked 5 jobs to keep you in private school. I'm like, thank you. I am not grateful. Thank you so much for everything, but you chose that.
Yeah, but again, it's like, maybe I didn't need private school. Maybe I needed an emotionally regulated mother, a father, whatever it might be. You know, it's a shift in paradigm a little bit. It's like, what really is most important here? Because teach a kid how to become self-aware and how to self-regulate. Whatever's possible.
So when I was in that interim, mediocre, half in, half out, one of the conversations, that space, one of the conversations I had with myself to help me continue finding the courage to make the jump was because they were like, dude, you could be one of the best in this game, finance, yada, yada, making millions. And I started I wasn't married yet. I had just started dating my wife when I was like a year or two into this. In
the liminal space, you found your wife?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't even looking for that either. She's part of the leap over too. But I was having this conversation of like, okay, so let's just say I don't quit and I have to do this because I see no other path. Let me just surrender and do what the world tells me to do. And I make millions. But I go home and I'm an angry asshole all day long. Sure. And then I end up divorced. My kids resent me because I can't shake past me sacrificing to make money to give this life to try to fill the void. So I was like, I'd rather just go have a good relationship. Like, it's not saying I don't like millions or nice money, but what's more important, being married and having my kids? So way before I even saw this situation, I started seeing, I know where this is going, and I've seen it in other people. I've seen it in my clients. I've seen it in my life. So that choice, that was part of the fuel too.
Yeah. I love that you found your wife. A couple of things. I feel like that's what, like, relationships they're going to call you over like that threshold. Like, man, like just the right relationship is going to call you over that threshold into like new life. And you have to go through that liminal space. So it always is funny to me because I feel like anybody that's there, that new relationship usually comes knocking on the door if they're not in a relationship.
Well, what's interesting, like I'm in finance, so like women are wired, safety, be provided for, this and that. Men are wired, like provide this and that. And like, obviously there's more nuances in the middle of all that. But like part of like, get out of that, go do this. Like even it was going against her grain to do that, but she saw something on this side, but she also knew I've succeeded before.
Yeah. She trusts you. Yeah. And on the other side of it, it's like we are never going to live a fulfilled, happy life that we can be proud of when our days are filled with self-betrayal. And for what so many of us, myself included, what I call success for so many years, it was actually just self-betrayal. You know, and came a moment, I remember being in a therapy session when I was here in LA, and I actually used this in one of my keynotes. But my therapist looked at me and she said, Caleb, you are never going to be satisfied and proud of what you accomplish until you're satisfied and proud of who you are. And every day you spend is a day, or every day you spend, you spend every day in this form of self-betrayal, and you call it hustle, you call it ambition, but it's fucking self-betrayal. And nothing's going to change until you change that. And so like, what is this concept? And you know, what I speak about often is the term like grounded success. Like, what does success look like that doesn't cost us at the expense of self? You know, because that's the new way of doing things. And so, that's, I think, the journey on the other side of, for so many people right now, I think people are, you know, they're finding themselves the type of tired that more sleep doesn't solve. Because they have been running as fast as they can, as hard as they can, for as long as they can, trying to fill that void and to make up for the inadequacy that they might feel in their lives, or there's that ache that there's something missing, that there's something more out there. And so if we can just climb this upward trajectory a little bit longer, a little bit taller, we'll find what we're looking for, but it's never fucking ever enough. So at some point, you just have to go into the ache, right? You gotta see, you know, how you're doing life is no longer working, and you're going to have to be willing to make that hard change. And usually it looks like creating distance and walking away. And so, I don't know. I hope more people find the courage to say yes to that. Yeah. Because it changes everything.
Say yes to that and realize it's okay to say no to the other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you define fear?
How do I define fear? Good question. I don't know. I don't know, a misunderstanding of love. Yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah, it's a misunderstanding of love where we don't see it as love. We don't see it as a gift, but that fear is just this upside down, love that has been like, flipped upside down through the experience of hardship in life. And it's surfacing in our life and we see it fear, but it's actually love. And we think that we have to outwork it. We think that we have to remove it. We think that we have to make it all better. We think that whatever it is, we think, but really we just have to learn how to accept it and befriend it. And then when we get close to it, we say, oh, fuck, you've been for me all along. Yeah.
How do you define what is love?
The silence, the present. I think love is what my heart says. It's like love is this infinite experience that is holding our lives together. And it's always here. It's always here. It's always here. Right? We can never outrun it. We can never escape it. We can never, move away from it. Love is just this infinite experience of everything, nothing. It's the ground that we're standing on. It's the sky. It's literally this whole experience that keeps everything held together. And I think it's working for us. And so I pause because I don't know if there's any words to actually describe it. I think love is a feeling. And I think it's an experience, an embodied experience. So not just necessarily a feeling, but an embodied experience that there is something. Let me say it like this. When I was in Kansas City, I was desperate for friends. And there's a group of guys from the team that invited me to go to Six Flags in Kansas City. And I fucking hate roller coasters. Despise them. But also desperate for friends. And so we go to this theme park and I managed to get out of every single ride that scared me. My mom called, my grandpa called, I got sick, I had to go to the bathroom, literally every single ride. And I was home free, bro. I was home free because we were like leaving the park 150 meters from the back exit. And as we were getting closer, one of the teammates, one of the guys, he's like, stop, we're doing this. And he points to this fucking bungee cord jump, free fall thing. Hell no. But as I'm looking at this ride, I realize that you don't do it alone, you do it in pairs. You go 10, like 2 people. And there's 6 of us. So I know that if I don't go, like one of my teammates is not going to go, or they're going to have to go with this, and I'm never going to hear the end of it. So there's no getting out of it. And I remember going on this ride, and the way it works is you get hoisted up, you get strapped into this harness, and you get hoisted up, and the person on the inside, there's like this contraption up at the top, and it's like a street light, and it would go from green, red, yellow, green. And when it turned green, the person on the inside pulls this cord, and it drops you into a free fall. And I was on the inside, and that light turned red, yellow, green, and I didn't pull fucking anything. And the longer I waited up there, the more I was actually on the verge of a panic attack. I was on the verge of tears. I was literally terrified. And the whole time, my friend Zeke is like screaming, pull the cord, shut the fuck up. And he realizes that I'm actually having a hard time. I'm not pulling this cord. And tears are now in my eyes, and he puts his hand on my shoulders and he says, Caleb, just be with me. We're going to get down, but the only way we're going to get down is if you pull that cord. We can do this together. On the count of 3, pull the cord. 1, 2, 3. Fuck it. Pull the cord. And those first fractions of a second, I was terrified. But after that, I literally began to laugh hysterically. And that laughter turned to crying. And like happy tears, Ruben, because I've never felt more free in my life. And I didn't know at the time, but that experience I feel like was a prophecy of me living my life through love. That's how I would say it. And what the experience is that for the first time in my life, I had this visceral experience, this tangible experience that I had fully let go, surrendered control, but yet there was still something bigger than me outside of my ability to have it all together that was actually holding my life together. And I feel like that is the definition of love, but it can only be tasted and felt and experienced on the other side of surrender. And yeah, to answer your question in a long-winded way, I think that's how I would experience or define love. And it's no words, and that's why I paused at the beginning, but it's an experience. And the beautiful thing about love, man, is we can't exhaust it. And so love is continually inviting us to a deeper, more satisfying, more fulfilling experience, but it's on the other side of letting go. And so it's not that letting go gets easier, but you said this earlier and I lost my train of thought, but when I was talking about confidence, like we build a confidence as we go through this experience. And the more times you let go, the confidence comes that, fuck, I might not know the next answer. I might not know what's going to happen next, but I know from my personal experience that I can let go and I'm not going to hit the ground. We're going to be okay. We'll figure it out at some point. Yeah. That's the confidence that comes from letting go. And I think love is constantly inviting us into a deeper, more present experience of this moment here and now, which maximizes our, quality of life, but is only found on the other side of letting go. And I think that that's that paradoxical experience that, yeah, I'm just rambling now, but that's what I would find and define love. No,
I love that. And I would simplify, because you're like, love is on the other side of love is on the other side of surrender. So I say love is a verb. Yeah. It's an active way of life. You're choosing it from the heart. It's a choice. So we choose fear, we choose love. Where do you want to live? What side do you want to live on? The upside down of love is fear, as you said. Stranger Things, the upside down. But so it's the action of surrendering is how you're defining it. And then you did bring up living through love. And the final question is, how do you define living a life through love?
Oh. How do I define living a life through love? Learning how to receive. Yeah. I think we are all really good at making our lives happen. But I think we failed to realize, and I think this is where what I've been chasing my whole life is inner rest, peace. And I thought it would come at the top of the top. If I could just get there, I will have everything I'm looking for. I think his name is Scott Erickson. I heard him define that a dream, like an idea of a life, is just a version of reality where we think we're free from vulnerability. And the football was never about football. It was about this reality where I thought that I would find internal safety. I would find rest. I would find peace. But we all know that's a trap. It actually created more unrest, more lack of peace, right? And so living through love, I feel like is learning how to receive. We're all good at making our lives happen and taking our lives to new heights. I don't think we're really good at learning how to receive the life that's already happening. We're all really good at pushing the river of our life forward. Right. And we fail to recognize that it's a river. There's a current in our lives that's already moving, already flowing. Our job isn't to push this fucking thing. Our job is to surrender and learn how to rest in it and allow it to carry us. And I think that's living through love.
Jump on a love raft and
go. Come on, dude. There's already a current. There's already this life force that's moving through us, and life is happening for us, and it's continually happening. The resistance and the suffering comes when we have, that we're white knuckling our lives and we're trying to make it happen and we're holding on tight and we're hustling harder. And I think we have to have a hard talk with ourselves and a moment with ourselves where we have to ask ourselves, is it really about the ruthless ambition, about the hustle, or is it about the avoidance of stillness? And that is living through love is actually befriending the stillness and allowing that life to just carry us. And we're resting in the river of our lives. It's a totally different way of doing life, man. It brings so much more inner peace. What does it look like to live our lives forward from a posture of rest? And a lot of people have a hard time with that because they think it looks and feels like complacency, mediocrity, but it's not. It's the most radical thing you can do, because it doesn't mean you're not doing things, you're not working, right? But the question is, where do you source your daily actions from? Are they coming from fear, or are they coming from love?
And that leads to a reaction from fear or response from love.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So if you're in a posture of rest and stillness, you get to respond to life.
Absolutely. You actually learn how to receive. Yeah. We don't know. And I think receiving is I think it's deeper than just a self-worth game. It is. I think receiving is synonymous with a regulated nervous system. And a lot of our ambition, what we call ambition and hustle, is a dysregulated nervous system. And we can't receive when we are not in a state of regulation. So that's a whole other conversation.
We live in a frantic, chaotic world to challenge us.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, brother.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you. Grateful for you.
Appreciate you. We're new friends.
Yeah, new friends, man.
Got great taste in hats.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Where can everyone find you?
Yeah, you can find me on my website, calebcampbell.me, or on Instagram. Not too active on social media these days, but it's just Caleb, CALEB_Campbell, CAMPBELL.
Awesome.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Live Through Love. If you love this episode, you'll love this episode.